Frederick and Catherine are now safe and secure, living in a mountain chalet in Switzerland. They live a quiet life. They play card games. She gets her hair coiffed while he reads about the war in the newspapers and tries to forget about anything important. My name's Trisha Lopezio. I'm your host for Tea and Bedtime Stories. In this episode, we will continue reading Ernest Hemingway's novel, A Farewell to Arms. Last time we read and discussed chapter 38, the first chapter in the final book of the novel, and tonight I'll continue the story with chapter 39. There are only 3 chapters left in the novels, and after tonight's reading, as always, I'll follow up with a few quick facts and my impressions. So let's begin chapter 39 of book 5. By the middle of January, I had a beard, and the winter had settled into bright, cold days and hard, cold nights. We could walk on the roads again. The snow was packed hard and smooth by the hay sleds and wood sledges and the logs that were hauled down the mountain. The snow lay all over the country, down almost to Montreux. The mountains on the other side of the lake were all white, and the plain of the Rhone Valley was covered. We took long walks on the other side of the mountain to the Bains des Lilas. I think that's how you say it. Sorry, Catherine wore hobnailed boots and a cape and carried a stick with a sharp steel point. She did not look big with the cape, and we would not walk too fast, but stopped and sat on logs by the roadside to rest when she was tired. There was an inn in the trees at the Bain des Lilas, where the woodcutters stopped to drink, and we sat inside, warmed by the stove, and drank hot red wine with spices and lemon in it. They called it glühwein, and it was a good thing to warm you and to celebrate with. The inn was dark and smoky inside, and afterward, when you went out with the cold air came sharply into your lungs and numbed the edges of your nose as you inhaled. We looked back at the inn with the light coming from the window and the woodcutters' horses stamping and jerking their heads outside to keep warm. There was a frost on the hairs of their muzzles, and their breathing made plumes of frost in the air. Going up the road toward home, the road was smooth and slippery for a while, and the ice orange from the horses until the wood-hauling track turned off. Then the road was clean packed snow and led through the woods, and twice coming here in the evening we saw foxes. It was a fun country, and every time that we went out it was fun. You have a splendid beard now, Catherine said. It looks just like the woodcutters. Did you see the man with the tiny gold earrings? He is a chamois hunter, I said. They wear them because they say it makes them hear better. Really, I don't believe it. I think they wear them to show they are chamois hunters. Are there chamois near here? Yes, beyond the Dent des Chamois. It was fun seeing the fox. When he sleeps, he wraps his tail around him to keep warm. It must be a lovely feeling. I've always wanted to have a tail like that. Wouldn't it be fun to have brushes like a fox? It might be very difficult dressing. We'd have clothes made, or live in a country where it wouldn't make any difference. We live in a country where nothing makes any difference. Isn't it grand how we never see anyone? You don't want to see people, do you, darling? No. Should we sit here just a minute? I'm a little bit tired. We sat close together on the logs. Ahead the road went down through the forest. She won't come between us, will she, the little brat? No, we won't let her. How are we for money? We have plenty, they honored my last sight draft. Won't your family try to get a hold of you now that they know you're in Switzerland? Probably I'll write them something. Haven't you written them? No, only the sight draft. Thank God I'm not your family. I'll send them a cable. Don't you care anything about them? I did, but we quarreled so much it wore itself out. I think I'd like them. I'd probably like them very much. Let's not talk about them or I'll start to worry about them. After a while, I said, "Let's go on if you're rested." "I'm rested." We went on down the road. It was dark now, and the snow sneaked under our boots. The night was dry and cold and very clear. "I love your beard," Catherine said. "It's a great success. It looks so stiff and fierce. And it's very soft and a great pleasure." "Do you like it better than without?" "I think so. You know, darling, I'm not going to cut my hair now until after young Catherine's born. I look too big and matronly now, but after she's born, I'm thin again, I'm going to cut it, and then I'll be a fine, new, and different girl for you. We'll go together and get it cut, or I'll go alone and come and surprise you." I didn't say anything. "You won't say I can't, will you?" "No, I think it would be exciting." "Oh, you're sweet. And maybe I'd look lovely, darling, and be so thin and exciting to you, and you'll fall in love with me all over again." "Hell," I said, "I love you enough now. What do you want me to do, ruin me?" "Yes, I want to ruin you." "Good," I said, "that's what I want too." And that's the end of chapter 39 of book 5. This was a much shorter chapter than the last few. But a few quick facts and then my impressions. The Bain des Alliés doesn't exist today from what I was able to find. But I think it was most likely some kind of natural hot spring or sauna or spa. It's probably been renamed or torn down near Montreux. And in my research, I did find a Alliés company or group of companies from the 1800s. So there may have been an Alliés family who built a spa for their family, and then it became open for public use. I don't know. This is all pure speculation, so I can't really call that a fact, but I know Bath stands for, or Bain Day something stands for bath of and whatever, and it would be common during that time for prominent families to build little resorts and open them for public use to help offset the cost, I'm sure. And the Alliés company, one of them at least, is famous for these exquisite little pocket watches that they make, or that they made. They were only in operation from like the early to mid 1800s. But anyway, I don't know what that is. But Glühwein, or in German, I guess in English it would translate to glow wine. It's usually made of red wine, can be made of white wine, but it's a mulled wine, or mulled wine, I guess, mulled wine. But it's cooked, meaning that's what that means, that it's cooked and fortified with some kind of spices, usually cinnamon or nutmeg or something like that. And it's traditional to drink this hot wine at Christmas in Switzerland or in the, Alps, whatever. And they use it to stay warm, right? You don't want to drink cold wine when it's cold outside. That'd probably be not as fortifying, for sure. It was interesting when you talked about how the ice was orange. I had to look that up because that sounded so gross to me. But, and this might be gross, so fair warning, I guess. But the ice can turn orange in color in the snow when the horses urinate on it, and the pig or plant pigments in the urine oxidize, and when they're exposed to air and cold temperatures, and it turns their pee in the snow orange. Gross. Sorry, but yeah, if you ever see orange ice, some animal that eats a lot of plants has been there. So I guess you learn something new every day. Anyway, a chamois, or some people call it the chamois, is like a type of goat and I guess maybe it's a hybrid between a goat and an antelope, but it lives in the mountains of Europe and the Caucasus, and it has these straight horns, but the tips are bent back. They're really unusual looking animals, and people will like bow hunt them for sport and stuff. I guess I don't know. I don't like to hunt, but if you do, good for you. Maybe try the Swiss Alps and hunt some chamois. Good luck with that. Anyway, the Dent du Jaman, he pronounced it the Dent du Jaman, but it's everywhere I've seen it's Dent de Jaman, which Dente is like the tooth of something. I don't know what Jaman means. I'm sure it's just the name of the area. Again, it might have been a prominent family that the region was named after, or they were the original landowners, or somebody just made up the name. But it doesn't have a direct English translation, but Dent du just means tooth of. And if you look at the peak of Dent du Jaman, it looks like a canine tooth. And in the description, I loaded a video where you can see what the view looks. Someone took a hike up there with their family and show you their trip. It's pretty cool to watch. Anyway, it's only a 5-minute video or something, if you're interested. Anyway, those were all the fast facts, because this was a really short chapter. I think the next two will be much longer. But my impressions of this part of the story, I like the way he sets up a scene, the author. The language that he uses to illustrate his surroundings is really vivid. Like when he described like coming outside and the feeling of the temperature shifting. I don't know, as an audience member, it made me feel like I was there. In a way, it really sets the scene. And the details he includes, paint a picture kind of the vibe around them, like talking about the glow wine that they were drinking and the horses stamping their feet. I don't know, I'm starting to get into his style of writing, and I get it now. He leaves a lot out, but he leaves enough in that you still get the picture, so to speak. The way Fred and Catherine interact is so childlike at times that it kind of bothers me it's childlike until Catherine pierces the conversation with her matter-of-fact synopsis of everything. And I'm sorry, but I hate the overuse of the word darling. It's starting to get on my last nerve. Because it's like she's trying to constantly reinforce the nature of their relationship out of fear of losing the narrative. Because she likes to paint this picture of a world that's on the fringe of reality. And it's like, I don't know, it feels really unnecessary. Terms of endearment are supposed to be like intentional cues, right? To reinforce your bond with that person. And then when you do it in public, it's like to try to distinguish that you have a relationship status. If you watch YouTube a lot, they have, or TikTok, I think is where it started. They have a lot of couples who will like not call each other babe or whatever. They won't use their term of endearment, or they'll just call each other by their actual name, and their partner's like, what's wrong? They get all insecure because using terms of endearment, they signal that you're in union with that person. They're the only person that you use those terms with, and so it's kind of like having a private joke or whatever, private context. And when you stop using those cues, it can signal that there's differentiation in the relationship status or whatever stage you're in. But some couples tend to overuse these terms of they're like babe, 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 babe for everything. And it's kind of annoying because if you watch them, it's like they're always calling attention to the fact that they're a couple. And if you watch them more closely, you notice there's like this underlying insecurity and they're constantly looking for validation from their partner, so that's why they overuse those relationship cues. And I'm starting to get that vibe from Catherine, like they don't converse very well, and so her overcompensation for that is that she's constantly calling him darling and talking about how much they love each other, and I don't know. It's like she's trying to make it up in her head as she goes along. And it's I don't know, it just feels counterintuitive. Like, keep trying to sell us on your relationship, but I can see that it's really shallow and, again, immature. But maybe that's just me. I'd love to hear what you think about that. And I hate that she called her future child a brat. It's very telling, but it kind of stung a little bit when I heard her referring to little Catherine as the brat. Because I think it's a leakage cue. Basically, no matter how much we try to deny our feelings, eventually we start to feel the impact of our decisions. And soon after that, regret can set in, right? Or some kind of disturbance in the force, right? A dissonance, because we've been trying to avoid looking at a certain thing soberly, but it somehow creeps up on us. And it's very telling that she would leak this like demeaning feeling towards this pregnancy, because she has to have some lingering thoughts of, did I make the right choice here? And am I doing the right thing? And throughout the chapter, it's very short, but she kind of alludes to the possibility that she may have been regretting her choice to have premarital sex and unprotected sex, and to now be in this foreign place with a stranger about to have his child. So I don't know. I don't think the type of character that is described here in Catherine would be the type of person that would ever admit that they had regrets about their choices. I think those types of people are very prideful and would never allow themselves to admit that they made a mistake. That's part of the stoic nature of suppression, is that once you go down that road far enough, you can't ever really go back without a feeling of maybe shame, because humans, we like to be consistent with our words and actions. And if she's been trying to convince herself this whole time that it was, oh no, everything's great, I'm great, and then finally admits to herself that it's not great, that's going to highlight an inconsistency in her character, and that can be a threat to our own personal identity, which is why a lot of people avoid that type of self-reflection. Anyway, that was a lot. Sorry. But sudden change of any type, whether it's good or bad, feels traumatic, because it is. It's, even if it's positive development, it's a sudden change. And when I learned about stress, I can't remember if it was in family communication studies or conflict management studies, but we were talking about stressors, and there's so many different types of stress. And what's interesting is that even good stress, like a surprise party, would have the same reaction, it could have the same reaction in your body physiologically as like being in a car accident or something, right? And so even good stress is stress, and it would make sense that she'd be stressed out by this unplanned pregnancy. But again, Catherine habitually suppresses her feelings, and when we engage in emotional suppression like routinely as a habit, we then tend to weaken our ability to effectively deal with our feelings directly when, and if we choose to. It becomes really overwhelming really fast, because our brain's like on alert. It's like, uh-oh, we don't do this. I've been tracking this pattern that we don't deal with things, so I've been storing them away. And now you're trying to, like, open up this overpacked closet, and it feels like, boxes are falling on your head. Because feelings, and it's interesting, but our feelings never really dissipate. They just subside, right? They can loosen their intensity, or lessen their intensity, but they come out somehow, and they eventually manifest through what a social scientist would call leakage cues. So it shows up in our nonverbal or our tone. Have you ever gotten too mad about something or too irritated with someone, and you were like, wow, where did that come from? That can usually be a manifestation of a deep-seated resentment towards the person, or that whatever event triggered some other past feeling that is now coming back. And it comes out in these leakage cues. Like, again, as I said yesterday, nonverbal communication is often unintentional. It can be very intentional, right? I can point to something that I want to emphasize, but it can also be very unintentional. And so that's why we need other people to help us figure out how we're doing, and because we can't always see things ourselves very clearly. That's why relationships are so great, because we can rub up against another person and they can help us figure ourselves out. But like with Frederick and Catherine, they're putting on a show for each other. So they're not even really being authentic. They're not talking about their true feelings. They're being performative. And so they're not allowing any truth or change. And it's kind of sad, because their quote-unquote love for each other is really a facade. But I am impressed with Hemingway's ability to include so much subtext so efficiently. It's notable that Frederick is finally opening up about his relationship with his family, for instance, but the narrative does appear to mirror Hemingway's relationship with his family over his decision to enlist in the army. They did not want him to go, and he kind of went behind their backs and did it anyway the second he turned 18. And it created, according to his biographies, it created a huge rift between them. They never approved of his choices in his late teen years, and that rift was never subsequently repaired. In fact, his parents were said to have been ashamed of his success with this particular novel. They apparently thought it was smutty and indecent, because they were both very devout Christians of good standing within their community. His dad was a doctor and his mom was a music teacher, and they were fairly affluent, and they cared more about, again, their reputation than their relationship with their son. And so because of the, subject matter in this book, they were really embarrassed. And his father ended up committing suicide after this novel was published, and that alleviated any opportunity for reconciliation, which is really unfortunate. And when he describes how, in the book, how Frederick and his parents, or his family, quarreled so much it wore itself out, I think that was really insightful. It was a way of outlining the consequences of having a low conversation, high conformity orientation family communication pattern, right? His parents didn't want to talk about it, but they expected him to just obey their wishes. And you can't treat adult children like that. Often these families break apart. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. But without conversation, negotiation becomes impossible. Collaboration is non-existent. Which means the only way to connect with that person is if you play a game or agree to whatever they claim is important in their presence and then go home and become who you authentically are. It's a show. And these families, right, they don't want to converse about it, about anything, unless they're comfortable with it, and they expect you to conform. And adult children don't conform, because conformity requires an element of control, and parents lose their ability to control their children when they become adults. So this style of communicating throughout childhood just doesn't work when your children grow up. And the sad reality is that this character, if he were real, or a real person, would be vulnerable to repeat the same communication patterns with his own children, right? Unless he made a conscious choice to break the cycle and learn to do things differently. But he's not off to a good start, because him and Catherine barely talk to each other. They deflect everything. They avoid everything. They put their stamp of whatever, if she brings up a subject he doesn't want to talk about it, he says, I don't want to talk about it. If he brings up a subject she doesn't want to talk about, she changes the subject or just makes some declarative statement. You still love me, don't you, darling? It's almost a form of emotional extortion. So they're doomed to repeat those same patterns where, low conversation, high conformity. And it's also sad. I kind of feel sorry for both of these characters, to be honest. But when Catherine talks about her hair, it just saddens me, because she clearly believes her value lies in being sexually attractive. And we don't often talk about it, but Frederick's, the other side of the same coin, where his character obviously is under the same pressure, but with different standards, right? His value is determined by his masculinity. And so they're each performing for the other. They think they're in love with each other, with this person, but they're really, because all they're seeing is an image, the only thing they could be in love with is the image that they see. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but that's all I have for chapter 39. In the next episode, we'll pick up where we left off and read chapter 40 of A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. Remember, there are only 2 chapters remaining in the entire novel. They're a little bit longer, so the episode will be a little bit longer. But please join me for more tea and bedtime stories. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks for listening.